Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today, two true crime stories, different corners of the world, but both with legacies that still echo.
We're going from 1960s Australia to early 20th century New York. But it's not just the crimes themselves, it's how they changed things.
First stop, 1960s Australia. Think Sydney Opera House, excitement, optimism. But then, a case that shook the nation to its core.
A case that forced Australia to face a dark new reality.
Okay, picture this. A family man wins the lottery, big money, like $3 million in today's terms. Dreams, possibilities.
But 5 weeks later, the dream turns into a nightmare. His 8-year-old son, Graham Thorne, vanishes, just gone.
And this wasn't just any disappearance, was it? This was something Australia had never seen before.
Australia's first kidnapping for ransom.
No.
So unprecedented they didn't even have a law against it.
The whole nation was in shock. The idea that a child could be snatched, just gone, like that.
It shattered that sense of safety, that innocence of childhood.
The kidnapper, Stephen Bradley, he demanded a huge ransom. And the threats he made. Chilling.
Feed Graham to the sharks. Those words, they gripped the entire nation.
Everyone was hoping for a miracle, but tragically, Graham's body was found.
Heartbreaking, absolutely. But the investigation itself, that was a turning point for Australian law enforcement.
It's like this case gave birth to forensic science in the country.
Early 1960s, no DNA testing, none of the sophisticated tools we have now. It was all about observation, meticulous analysis.
Like those tiny details. The soil on Graham's clothes, that pink mortar, the cypress tree needles.
Each one, a clue.
And then, that dog hair, pecan hair, on the blanket. It linked Bradley directly to the crime.
Back then, hair analysis wasn't as precise as it is today, but it was still a huge breakthrough.
And it wasn't just the police, right? Scientists, botanists, geologists, they all contributed their expertise.
Absolutely, a real team effort. It showed how important that kind of collaboration is in criminal investigations.
Okay, now let's shift gears. Fast forward a few years, across the globe to New York City, the early 1900s, and we meet Isabella Goodwin, a woman who defied all the expectations of her time.
Isabella started as a police matron, caring for women and children in custody.
But she was so much more than that. Her intelligence, her sharp eyes, she wasn't content just sitting behind a desk.
And remember, this is a time when women's roles were very strictly defined. But Isabella, she thrived in undercover work.
Disguises, quick thinking, she exposed fake doctors, busted psychic scams.
Even infiltrated an all-female gambling den.
She was a master of transformation, blending in, picking up on little details, making those disguises completely convincing.
And talk about risky.
I mean, one fortune teller she was investigating actually threatened her. Shows you the kind of danger she was in, often working alone.
The challenges women in law enforcement faced back then were immense.
But she never backed down. And her work on that taxicab bank heist, the way she got into that boarding house, that led to her promotion.
And deservedly so. The NYPD's first female detective, finally.
A true testament to her perseverance, her talent.
Her story became a symbol for so many women. Proof that they could excel in any field, even those dominated by men.
Isabella's story is incredible. But let's go back to Australia for a minute. The Graham Thorne case, we talk about how it changed forensic investigations.
Yeah.
But what did they actually do? Like, no DNA back then, so what were the techniques?
Right, early 1960s, DNA was science fiction. But they were meticulous. Take the soil and plant matter on Graham's things, for example. They found traces of pink mortar, unusual, and cypress tree needles.
Yeah, the cypress trees, the pink mortar, those little details, they were like breadcrumbs leading somewhere.
Exactly, and they led to a specific type of area, narrowing the search. Then there was the dog hair. Pecan hair, to be precise.
On the blanket, right?
Yeah. It wasn't as definitive as hair analysis is today, but back then it was huge. It connected Bradley directly.
So it wasn't just detectives, it was scientists too, like botanists for the plants, geologists for the soil.
It was a whole team, and that case really proved how important that is, having different experts working together.
Now, back to Isabella. I gotta say, her undercover work is fascinating. It sounds like she was a natural. What were some of her, I don't know, most memorable disguises?
Oh, she was a master of transformation. In that gambling den, she just blended right in, even carried a racing form to fit in.
Wow. But what about that fortune teller who threatened her? That must have been scary.
Oh, definitely. Isabella faced real risks, often working alone. It shows just how tough it was for women in law enforcement back then.
But she didn't let it stop her. And her work on that bank robbery, the one with the taxi, brilliant. Especially getting into that boarding house. That's what got her the promotion, right?
Absolutely. It was the culmination of all her hard work, her talent.
So both these cases, They had huge impacts. We touched on some of the changes, but I'm curious about the long-term effects. What were their legacies?
Well, for Australia, the Thorne case, it was a wake-up call. They had to face the reality of child abduction, improve safety measures.
Like protecting lottery winners,
Yeah.
the privacy and all that.
Yeah, that too. It changed laws, police work, even how people thought about personal safety. It made them realize that even in a safe place, bad things could happen.
And Isabella, she may not have had it easy, but she opened doors for so many women in law enforcement.
Her legacy. It's every female officer who followed her, breaking down barriers. Her story shows that even when the system is against you, one person can make a difference, and that difference can last for generations.
It's amazing, isn't it? Two different cases, different countries, different times, but they both show how much impact one person can have.
They show the power of resilience, of innovation, of fighting for justice no matter what. And they remind us that history isn't just made by the famous people, but by ordinary people thrust into extraordinary situations.
You know, it makes me think of that quote. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. These stories show us that even without power or a title, we can all make a difference.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. It's like that ripple effect. You throw a stone in the water, the waves keep going. Exactly. And sometimes those ripples, they turn into tidal waves. They change laws, they change institutions, they change how we think.
And it's not always about big dramatic actions, is it? Sometimes it's the small things that make a difference.
Right. It's paying attention, speaking up, noticing those little details that others might miss. That postman in the Thorne case, if he hadn't noticed that car, who knows what might have happened?
And Isabella, she just kept pushing, kept challenging the system. It's inspiring, but it's also kind of sad, that the women's precinct she helped create, it was shut down so quickly.
It shows how far we've come, but also how far we still have to go. Equality, it's a constant fight.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's something that really stuck with you? What made you think, wow, I got to learn more about this?
For me, it's the contrast. Like with the Thorne case, everyone was focused on the kidnapping, the ransom, the sharks. But behind all that drama, there was this incredible scientific investigation going on.
And with Isabella, it's easy to get caught up in the disguises, the danger, the excitement. But it's her dedication to justice that's truly remarkable. She risked her life to protect others, to make things right.
It reminds us that every story has layers. There's the surface, the headlines, the sensational stuff, but then there's the deeper truth, the human stories, the motivations, the complexities.
So for our listeners out there, what's the one thing you'd like them to take away from this deep dive? What's a question they should be asking themselves?
I think it's this. Every action, every event, it creates ripples. It might seem small at the time, but those ripples, they can travel far and wide. They can change things in ways we can't even imagine.
That's a powerful thought. So next time you hear a news story, read a history book, even just listen to a friend tell a story, think about those ripples. Think about the connections, the unseen consequences.
And remember, you have the power to create those ripples too.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey, Deep Divers. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring. We'll see you next time.